but we don't often pull up a mirror
Mm.
and look at ourselves. And the truth is that you can't scale a business without scaling you first.
You worked a long day and you feel like you got nothing done because it was nothing aligned with your priorities or your role.
One thing I liked about what we did in the beginning is we brought some awareness to what was going on. But awareness without action, it's just expensive therapy.
All right. Hey, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of the Beyond Seven Figures podcast. With me today is my co-founder and head of coaching for Predictable Profits, Stephanie Vaughan.
Hello.
And
Hello. Good to see you.
it's good to
It was so good to see you last week in person, though.
Yeah, last week we did our very first breakthrough summit. So we brought in 15 other 7-8-figure CEOs into a room, spent a couple days really diving deep into their companies to help them position themselves not only for a big year, but also a banner 2026. Now, this is our first offsite. It was pretty extraordinary. Every member gave it a 10 out of 10, perfect score. And the most common bit of feedback we got was that it was the most transformative, best CEO and founder event that they have ever been to in their entire lives. In fact, people are still buzzing that I got 2 messages already this morning, which doesn't include the message that I got again at 12:30 last night, of just founders that are still buzzing and still getting these aha moments left and right. Boom, 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 boom. And so much of what we went through had to do with insights they weren't getting anywhere else, both insights about themselves and insights about their business that they weren't getting anywhere else. They all agreed that it's the first time they had ever heard any of this information ever before. But then one of the exercises that you took them through to kick things off before we even got into how to fill their sales pipeline and how sales is evolving and different ways to protect themselves from the disruptions in the coming years. You took them through this exercise to do some self-analysis on themselves as a leader, Stephanie. It's interesting because you've called it out before. You said that conversation, oftentimes it isn't sexy, but if we can get people to kind of look inside, it has a radical impact. And that's exactly what happened. I mean, we're talking, 7-8-figure CEOs that by the end of your session, I mean, it was just, you could see just the transformation that was already starting to exist within their face. Just on their face, you could see it. So let's talk about that a little bit, Stephanie. You had people start with an assessment. It was a 4-part assessment. Part 1 had to do with identity and fear. So we'll get to the other 4 parts in a second. Let's talk about that for a minute, Stephanie, about the identity and fear of a CEO and how that might hold somebody back. So, well, where do we go with that? Why identity and fear? I mean, you talked about things like, I delegate important decisions and trust my team to deliver, or I'm involving my leadership identity to match the business I'm building, or I approach challenges from vision and strategy rather than fear and ego. I release roles and responsibilities that no longer serve my highest value to the company. But then again, I seek out and embrace opportunities that push me beyond my comfort zone. So some self-analysis there. Why? Why is that so important?
Well, it's funny, as a business, you and I talk a lot about, our whole team does. We talk about, being in the founder's trap, right? And how we're stuck as a business. And oftentimes we look outward and we look at the strategies that we're doing. We look at the processes that we're implementing. We look at the sales that are coming in or not coming in. And we are, and especially in the beginning, and as we're moving from a 7-figure to an 8-figure business, we're still very much in the center of it all. And so we oftentimes look outward to say, well, why is this happening? Yeah, I'm stuck. But we don't often pull up a mirror
Mm.
and look at ourselves. And the truth is that you can't scale a business without scaling you first. And we oftentimes, as leaders, we operate from this fear and, fear of, not having predictable revenue, fear of not hiring the right people, fear of our clients leaving, fear of not, like, we're just in this constant, mode of fear. And even when we're operating from fear, we're also operating from emotion. When we're operating from emotion, we're oftentimes not making great decisions. And so it's really, I think what was really beneficial from this last week was we got everybody to stop, slow down, pull up a mirror, and get us a little bit self reflective. And we oftentimes, when we're operating from that way, our businesses are often hitting a ceiling, right? Because, you know, we think it's those external factors, but oftentimes it's leadership in disguise
Mhm.
that's causing it to hit a ceiling. So, I think that oftentimes we're operating from fear, and we're masquerading in, well, am I wait, I want to wait for the right time, right? So it holds us back from making powerful decisions, and success loves speed. We also may have an ego. Our ego is operating. We feel like we have to be involved in everything. And we kind of masquerade it as, oh, well, I have high standards. And so when we're operating from that place, we oftentimes create this limiting, these limitations, what I like to call limiting beliefs. And so I think that we get honest with ourselves and ask ourselves, how are we showing up? What are we doing to work on ourselves? And we as leaders really should be working on ourselves
Yeah.
more than anything else, because it's how we show up. We set the example for the people in our team. How we're operating, how we're showing up. And this also can stem as early as the first thing when you wake up in the morning.
Yeah.
What are you doing in the morning to set yourself up for success? Are you starting off with gratitude and, setting the tone and the focus and the intention for the day? Are you doing things to take care of your body? Are you, what's your state when you're coming into your office? And if your state is you're stressed, you're overwhelmed, you're anxious, you're not going to be performing at your highest. You're not going to be thinking clearly around how are you going to proactively grow and strengthen your company? You're going to end up sitting at your desk, you haven't been prepared, and you start responding to emails and you start
Yeah.
reacting. The first thing that you do is start reacting to your day. And so it was just really powerful, I think, because we don't often take time to self reflect. We don't take time to look at what are our behaviors and the patterns that we have in our life and our work that are either supporting what we want or detracting from what we want.
When I look at this, for the most part, I feel like I score pretty well in those areas of identity and fear. But I will say that the reason why I score well is because I have a team that has supported me and encouraged me there, right? Like you and Zach and Joe and Walker, Jerson, the team, they're continuously looking at what should Charlie be doing and how can I support him by taking more off of his plate? And we oftentimes operate with this mantra of ask for forgiveness, not permission. But so much of that is accepted because we trust the team. It's never, let's ask for forgiveness instead of permission because they're self serving. That would be a totally different conversation. They ask for forgiveness because it's like, I'm going to take on this responsibility and design a strategy. And I know the impact is, even if I make a mistake, the impact isn't going to be a consequential blow to the company, but I at least want to make sure that I do this. And that has been really, really great in terms of being able to delegate more. And sometimes if there is there such thing as reverse delegation, where somebody takes it instead of
I think that's a new term that we can coin.
I think it might be. And I believe that's what it is almost like reverse delegation. You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah. I could see that.
and I know that there's been several times where the team will meet without me. And that's not a bad thing. It's because the team is trying more and more to ensure that I'm removed from the founder's trap.
100%.
That's so when we talk about identity and fear, and when we talk about the team and its role, like when you bring in the right people and you set the culture that allows for that, it can be really, really powerful. And some
Yeah.
culture, I know Joe often says, man, you've got to create a whole module and we've got to teach culture and what we've been able to do. And I find so much of it has been accidental.
Mm,
Wish I could honestly come back and say, this has been so intentional. Oh yeah, but it's like, it was accidental beginning
I
with way, way back when in one of my first companies. I was just tired of getting headaches. And I was like, no headaches. Like, I can't handle the headaches anymore. So it was just surrounding myself with people that didn't give me headaches. And then I think, you know, and then little at a time through years of scars and knowing, you know, what I liked and what I didn't like. And then, with you and one of your zones of genius is that you're able to recognize the areas of myself that I haven't recognized that makes me better, and you are uncompromising in letting me settle in any way. And you'll be like, no, no, no. Like, I know you can do this and you are going to do this and just get it done. That's part of the great thing about surrounding yourself with people that are excited about where to go.
Yeah, it reminds me of what I was sharing at the workshop, when we were talking about the fact that you can't build an eight-figure business with six-figure habits,
No.
and that's how most of us are operating. Most of us are operating with six-figure habits, and but I do wanna take this moment as you were talking about this because I was thinking a lot about this over the week when we were having our event, is you have this uncanny ability to attract really great people. And so I'm going to disagree with you a little bit because I don't think it was accidental. I think that it it was because of the standards that you have. And so when I think of you as a CEO, when I think about you are CEO of our company, you're our leader, you've worked with us to come up with the vision and the direction, but it's also the person that you are and your absolute unwillingness to compromise character and quality of people that are around you. Now, I feel very privileged to be a part of that team, so I thank you for that. But when I look at everybody else, I look at Joe and Tom and Jerson and Walker and Zach and everybody else, I see this team of just really high quality people.
Mm.
And so and every single person, this was also mentioned on the offsite, right? Was where everybody was saying, like, I wanted, I had so many people come up to me and it was surprising. It was such a gift where they said, I want a team like yours.
Mm.
That's what I want to build. I want to build a team. And it made me really think about the magic that we have here and how we all are committed, how we all go above and beyond, how we all want to do our best and how we all come from a place of authenticity. I don't know if this is appropriate to say, but I was talking to Heather, your wife, when I was at your house and she was giving me a little bit she's like, you're the only woman on the executive team, like, how do you do it? How do you do it? And I said, well, first of
Patience
all,
and day drinking.
I am looking forward to when we bring a little bit more estrogen in the team, but because most of the time you guys are like, "What is she talking about? What is this female talking about?" But I've predominantly worked in a very male environment most of my life, and I think a lot of us women leaders have. And what I did tell her though is I said, "I in all of my career, I have never worked with such a genuine, authentic, family-oriented group of men in my life."
Mm.
And I've always felt so protected, so safe as a female executive working with you guys and also incredibly respected. And so again, I think that's just a testament to you. And I think for everybody that's listening, this goes back to what I say about how do you show up? What are your standards? Are you willing to accept certain things that are toxic in your environment? Are you willing, do you turn a blind eye when you have somebody on your team who is negative or pessimistic or, again, toxic or talking about other people or not willing to do the work because you simply just don't want to have to deal with hiring somebody else. And so you hold on to this mediocrity. And we absolutely don't do that.
Yeah.
We're uncompromising around that.
Mm.
And so, I share that because, again, for everyone listening, how much, when we talk about hiring the right people or bringing on the right people, how much do you, those listening, are you willing to make sure that you're hiring the right people? And how often do you hire somebody really fast and you take forever to let them go if you know that they're not the right fit?
Yeah.
And you don't realize the effect that has and the domino effect and the trickle effect it has to the rest of the organization when you keep an individual on that long. And so anyway, I was just really I just felt very grateful for our team, and it was such a good reminder. But I think that we all again get a hold up the mirror and say, what am I doing that's supporting the culture? Because culture is created no matter what,
Yeah.
whether you're intentional with it or you're unintentional with it. And I would say it's a very rare case where if you're unintentional, that you end up getting the culture that you want.
Yeah. It almost never happens.
Yeah,
Right.
almost never.
Thank you, Stephanie, for that. And, you know, you brought up a couple points. And number one is that if somebody is not the culture fit, to remove them quickly. Back in one of my earlier companies, I had this rule, no headaches. And what happened is I ended up firing so many people. I had, over 100 people that, were all working for me back at the time. This is when I was doing real estate development. So a lot of them were going to be subcontractors and whatnot. We had so many people. And there was this joke going around, and it was a little crass, but, I guess the industry allows for it a little bit. And they said, you can tell every time Charlie changes his underpants because he's going to walk in and fire someone. I don't know where they brought that connection. Well, that's because I was firing somebody else, several times a week. It was like, because the stress was so high, I was like constantly holding my chest, and it was crazy. But then what happened is over time, then everybody understood what was expected. And then I didn't have to let
Mhm,
I think I went years without having to let another person go after that. And what happened is
mhm,
they would come back and they would say, this is the best project that I've ever worked on because everybody works together. The framer is helping the roofer bring stuff all the way up to the roof. The electrician is helping the plumber, and everybody started working together. And the result is that they all said it was the best project that they had ever had to work on because of just that one simple culture that was built in, no headaches. And, when you look at what that does for the team, I mean, Tom couldn't wait to get to the airport with his laptop and start working from this event. He just put in so many hours and everybody was exhausted, but he couldn't wait to start working. And the rest of the team, everybody was like, they couldn't wait. They just want to start working. And every single one of them has this little bit of an owner mentality, which is phenomenal. Right. So, now, as we look into the next section, part two, you also had our folks look at boundaries and burnout. Everything from protecting their time and energy by having clear boundaries to regularly saying no to opportunities that aren't aligned with the vision, designing the schedule to prioritize high value strategic initiatives over day-to-day tasks, creating space for rest and recovery, and investing in systems and people that reduce workload without sacrificing results.
Well, one thing I liked about what we did in the beginning is we brought some awareness to what was going on. But awareness without action, it's just expensive therapy.
Mhm.
And so what I encourage a lot of people to do is, take a moment once a week or gosh, once a month, which is I guarantee is going to be more than what you've been doing in most cases. And evaluate how you're showing up and look at, what am I doing that is supporting the effort of the company? What am I doing that's helping to move the company forward, that's helping to evolve? Again, when I look at where we've evolved even just the last couple of years, is night and day,
Yeah.
because we constantly look at, how do we make this better? How do we make this better? How do we make this better? What's working? What's not working? And I think we also need to do that, not just from a strategic perspective or our deliverables or how we serve our clients, but we also get to look at that with ourselves as well. And you and I have had many moments,
Yeah.
right? And working together, where we've had these moments that, wow, this isn't working.
Yeah.
I need to evolve, or you need to evolve. And one thing that I've always appreciated is that we've had some of those tough conversations, and yet we've both been very open to that.
Yeah.
We've both very open to say, yeah, I could see that. I could see how I could get better here. And so I think that it's really powerful, to take a moment to set some time aside, and, and even if it's once a quarter, I think is even more than most people do, to evaluate, what am I doing as a leader that supports the continuum of the direction that I want my business to go,
Yeah.
how I'm impacting my staff, how I'm interacting with my fellow peers, how am I showing up to this, and to make a commitment to intentionally look at, what am I doing that's supporting that.
Mhm.
But I think just as much, we also, because we operate from fear, we operate from limiting beliefs, we also need to look at and say, well, what is it that I've been holding off? What is it that I know I should be doing
Yeah.
that I'm not doing? Whether that's how you get yourself set up in the morning before you even come into the office. Is it, that meeting that, those meetings that, or restructuring your meetings because they're just not working, but you're not taking the moment to
Yeah.
make it better, so you have a better outcome.
Yeah.
The list goes on forever. And so, I think just making a commitment to just one thing.
Yeah.
I think we also, like, we wait and we wait and we wait because we're like, I just got to do a complete overhaul. Right? That's like what we do in the beginning of the year when we're like, "Well, I haven't gone to the gym and I haven't been eating well and I've been eating a lot of cake."
Yeah.
And then you start in January and you're like, "I'm hitting the gym really hard and I'm just gonna diet and I'm totally going off of alcohol and I'm not drinking anymore." And, like, we do these massive shifts, and our lives are like, "Whoa, whoa, whoa, that's a lot." And then what happens? You don't sustain it.
Right.
And so we like consistent incremental improvement. Tony Robbins actually talks about that, now that I think about it.
Yeah.
And so if we give ourselves enough time to evaluate what's working, what's not working, what can I be doing differently, and we choose one thing. I was talking to a client about this just the other day. It was something so incredibly simple, and he came back and he said, that was a game changer for me.
Yeah.
It was just one thing that I asked him to shift. And so if we can do that on a consistent basis, we can learn to, take something that just isn't serving us anymore and make a commitment to starting it. So we don't feel that sense of we have enough overwhelm in our lives
I mean,
as it is.
sure.
We don't need to add more to it.
That was one of the muscles that was harder for me because I tended to be, more reactive, right? So that was a muscle that I had to build. Wake up in the morning, I have, a dozen Slack messages and emails galore. And then it was just, you start responding to messages in Slack. And then before you know it, you look at the end of the day, you worked a long day and you feel like you got nothing done because it was nothing aligned with your priorities or your role. You were being very reactive. And every once in a while, I'll find myself slipping into that. And that's when I get frustrated because I'm like, I got nothing done. But I need to be able, and we all do, need to be able to establish those boundaries to look at, okay, you know what? My activities are going to drive the company forward. And that has to be a top priority. And I need to do that,
Mhm.
arm my team to solve a lot of the issues that they were coming to me for and whatnot. And that's a big one. That's definitely a big one. And I think a lot of people tend to do that. That's where they get more reactive. And the boundaries, the burnout is often when they get caught in the founder's trap. Catherine from our offsite mentioned how her 9-year-old daughter picked up on that. That, she was sitting in her office and people kept walking
Right.
in and people kept walking in and whatnot. So her 9-year-old daughter created a sign and hung it on the door that just said, "Do not disturb." This should get some work done.
Very cute. Yeah.
Part 3 is beliefs and blind spots. Everything from I actively challenge and upgrade my beliefs about money, leadership, and success. Do I seek out diverse perspectives to identify and address my blind spots? I openly acknowledge and act on truths that drive my business forward. I regularly examine the stories I tell myself and replace ones that limit me. I'm willing to be coached, mentored, and guided to my next level. I'm surrounding myself with people who expand my thinking and challenge my assumptions and evaluate with curiosity rather than defensiveness. I find this is probably almost as important as all the others. Some people naturally pass through it, but if you're the type of person that listens to something and your immediate response is yeah, but nothing else that we talk about matters. Nothing else. We call those the yeah, but people. They're
Right.
just not coachable. They think they know it all, and they are their biggest and worst enemy. It
Yeah.
and and so it would be A, the yeah, but people, and then 2, you and I discussed this. It's the stories we tell ourselves. Lindsay, who won our Client of the Year award at the event, when we started working together, her story was, I'm a mom and I want to make sure that I pick up my kids at the bus stop at 2:30. I never want to miss that at 2:30, and I want to end the day so I can be with my kids. It's important that I'm also a good wife and I can be there, for my husband and support him. And when he comes home from work, I want that time to be able to connect. So I don't want to just work all evening and then, sacrifice my ability to connect with him either. And I don't want to work weekends. And so she had a lot of this stuff. And so she's like, so I think that means that I'm just never really going to be able to grow this extraordinary business. And so, I was fortunate she just lives down the street. So we were able to have a nice long lunch and talk it through. And I'm like, if you want better answers, you got to ask better questions. So what could the question, ask me a better question. So let's ask me a better question. Let's go for better answers. And so eventually she was like, how could I build, this particular business while also doing this? Well, it's a great question.
Mhm.
Now let's talk about what that would look like. And she won Client of the Year because she did just that. She's created a business that most people would love to have themselves. She was uncompromising in the rules that she set. So she's always been there for her children's bus stop. And she's made extraordinary amount of money and results for her business. It's done really, really good. What else do you see, Stephanie, when it comes to those beliefs and those blind spots?
Well, for the female leaders out there, I connect so much with that. I really connected with Lindsay because I too, when my kids were young, wanting to find the balance and not at all, in no circumstance was I willing to compromise the impact of being a good mom and to spend the time with my kids. And oftentimes, what you remind me of is that we've got to look at what's also holding us back. And what are some of the things that just aren't serving us that we're doing?
Right.
And so you can't, like if you look to create a new habit, you can't create a new habit really without getting rid of old ones.
Mhm.
And you can't really step in to your future if you're still dragging, this old person along, this past self along.
Mhm.
And so you get to ask yourself, well, what are the behaviors that I'm exhibiting? What are the things that are, that I'm operating from fear or ego or control that's no longer serving me? So that's not allowing me to get to the next level. And I think we get to ask ourselves that because oftentimes, and that's what Lindsay had. She had a limiting belief around that.
Yeah.
And I had some of that too. And what I was able to come up with was an environment for myself and my kids that allowed me to still be a businesswoman, still have an impact on hundreds and hundreds of businesses, and also still be there for my kids.
Yeah.
And all of us, all of our routines are different. Everybody has a different way that they're going to go about doing that. But the thing is not to be uncompromising of the things that matter the most in your life. So there's things where many of us will say, the most important thing in my life is my family. The most important thing in my life is my health. The most important thing in my life is this and that, but they're not living it.
Yeah.
And so they're not demonstrating or really creating the intentionality around those true values. And so we get to ask ourselves, am I really living my truth around that? Am I really living what I'm saying, what's coming out of my mouth?
Yeah.
Am I being that person?
And so many of us, even if you don't think you have a limiting belief, you do. And it's
We all do.
we all
Yeah.
do. And it could be something as simple as you talk to somebody and they go, well, it's a bad economy. It's like, well, your limiting belief is because of the economy that you're unable to get such and such a result. Or you might have a limiting belief where you say, well, it just takes forever to close a client. Well, that is your limiting belief, that it is currently taking forever to close a client, but it doesn't have to be that way. It doesn't
Yeah.
at all. So there's so many limiting beliefs that you look at as fact. And maybe you've heard other people say it. You look at it as fact, but it's not that way. Or AI is a big one. AI is going to put me out of business. I've heard that God knows how many times. It's like, that is a limiting belief. And we've seen that. And so if you have limiting beliefs, or if you're not sure if it's a limiting belief, reach out to us and we can talk about that, because you'd be surprised at how much of that actually limits your ability to grow your company and yourself as a leader. And those limiting beliefs will bleed through all the way through to your employees, just like your parents had limiting beliefs that get passed to you as children, that you then pass on to your kids. So you have to be careful of the stories you tell yourself, because that will be passed through to your employees too. And then
So true.
lastly, Stephanie, vision and power. I make bold strategic moves that align with my long-term vision. I communicate my vision in a way that inspires and mobilizes my team. I take decisive action, even in the face of uncertainty. I certainly align daily decisions with the bigger picture I'm building. I see challenges as opportunities to expand my influence and impact. I trust my instincts and judgment when making high-stakes decisions, and create momentum by turning vision into actionable plans quickly. We've worked on a vision a while ago, and then you were relentless. There were points where it was every day, but it was every week for a bit. And then when I took too long, then it was every day. Might have been a couple times a day, but you were like, we need a vision. We need a vision. Like, get me that vision. And even still now, like, we've got a vision that inspires us a lot. But even still, Joe reached out and he was like, I love the vision. I'm super inspired. But now we need a vision for 2026, not our 5-year vision, not our 10-year vision. We need a vision for 2026. What is that vision going to look like? And I respect the fact that the team wants this, because that means that they're bought in, right? They're bought in. They want to be a part of something bigger. They're excited for what we're creating. If they're not asking for it, they wouldn't have cared. Like, they just wouldn't have cared, but they're excited. Like, they want to be a part of this. Where am I going? And that's the difference. Oftentimes, if your team's not asking you for your vision, it's usually a symptom that the team's not A players. A players, inevitably, like, they always want to know where the vision is. That's a very common trait among A players.
That's also a hiring strategy too, by the way. That's also a way of attracting A players. If you're able to articulate and communicate your vision, because especially what I found in small business is people work in small business because they want to be a part of something greater than themselves.
Yeah.
They want to be a part of, you're working in a corporate environment, and that's okay. There's tremendous amounts of opportunities in corporate environments. However, it's very difficult to create real change in a big corporate company. It's like turning a battleship in a bathtub.
Yeah.
But when you're in a small environment, you can see a direct impact of your efforts and your commitments in the company, and it's much more malleable. And so they want to know, where are we going? What's the trajectory? What's the why behind what we're doing? Because they want to make sure that it aligns with their values, with their efforts, with their commitments. And so I think that it's just so, so important that any small business articulates a vision. And I think it's also just as important, because a lot of times we write the vision down just like we put together a business plan to get maybe funding, and then you file it away and you never look at it again.
Yeah.
And so for those of you who maybe have not created a vision, and your vision is also the thing that also helps to define your culture, it also helps to give you the guardrails to say, well, who do I want to be a part of that? Who do I need that is going to align with my vision? And, one of the things that you said several years ago when we were at an event, and it really stuck with me, was that you should hire people based on how aligned they are with your culture,
Mhm.
and fire people based on how out of alignment they are with your culture.
For sure.
And I thought that just hit me a lot. I remember sitting there, we were talking to a client, and you said that, and I was like, that's the best definition of culture I've ever heard, because it's so true. And I think that that all ties in to having a vision of your company. And I think a lot of people think of vision as, oh, it's just a little fluffy thing. It's just a, little, you know, just some words on a piece of paper. But the next thing is with your vision is you've got to live it.
Yeah.
You've got to work toward it. You've got to align your goals to it. So just like what you were saying that Joe was asking, because we were discussing that in Florida as well, is that we have this long-term vision. Now we get to work backwards. We get to reverse engineer what our goals are, where our focus is going to be, to make sure that we're in alignment with what we all agree that we want to accomplish in our vision.
So much of this isn't unique to business. I attended the U.S. Army War College as a civilian, and when just for a leadership thing, it wasn't all 4 years, but you look at these generals that are preparing for battle, and they know that it never goes as planned, right? So you go into battle, and the next thing you know, you got a bad guy that blows up a bridge that you had planned to go across. Now you got to find some other way to get from point A, right? So when they have a vision, or in military terms, you call it a commander's intent. Commander's intent is, this is what victory looks like. And you paint a big picture as possible for commander's intent. This is what victory looks like. So that this way, it gives some understanding of this is what we're going to do. But then as we get the data, it might end up we might have to go this way, might have to go this way, but everybody knows, regardless of where they are in the org chart, what we're building towards. And that's very similar to that commander's intent. And you need to have that, or otherwise, well, your vision of success is going to be different from somebody else's vision of success, and so forth, and it's going to be messed up. And culture is basically that's the rules of the game. That's the behaviors that are accepted. It's not like, we're going to show up and, we're going to be optimistic and we work hard, and like none of this flowery language. It's, these are expected set of behaviors. So at Predictable Profits, we have 3 really core values. Results is a big one, which, where we have reasons and results. The only thing that matters is the results. So everything has to be data-based. Data is what guides our decisions. So somebody can come back and be like, hey, this is what I believe works. Do we have the data? No, then let's test it and get the data so that we can see what happens. Right. So
Mhm.
reason,
Yep.
rather than just sit there and debate it for days. The next one is no headaches. Right. So that means that you want to go on vacation, have the systems to make sure that somebody's responding to your emails, so that not the company doesn't feel your presence being gone from a operational standpoint and so forth. No toxicity, no talking behind people's back, all that other stuff, right? And then the third one is together we're better. And nothing that we've ever created that has been extraordinary has been built in a silo. And so, it
That's right.
encourages this collaboration. And those are the three core values that we have, that we continue to we talk about them almost every week, and it's like, because something's going to come
Mhm.
up and it's like, well, what do we think? And it's like, well, remember results. I
Mhm.
was like, okay, yeah, let's go for the data. Or Walker just went on vacation. Hey, remember, dude, no headaches. Okay. He knows exactly what that means, or, Zach's working on the partnership program. Hey, dude, remember, together we're better. Let's do some collaboration. It's like, all right, got it. So, it has to constantly be reinforced. But Stephanie, I know we're pushing up against the clock here. This is a Beyond Seven Figures podcast. What would you say is your biggest, best tip for our clients that want to take their business beyond seven figures?
I think it's so important as leaders that we stay open and we stay willing to pull up a mirror and look at how we're showing up, what habits, what patterns, what behaviors are we doing that's either contributing or taking away from our ultimate outcome that we want to create. And oftentimes in this culture, and we see it everywhere now with social media, is we look outward.
No.
We look outward at all the things that aren't working and we blame everybody else, and we get to take ownership and we get to look at where are we contributing in a positive way or a not so positive way. And so I just encourage everybody to be willing to, like I said, once a month, once a quarter, take a moment, hold up the mirror and ask yourself, where am I contributing to the positive outcomes? And where am I contributing to the events that are not serving our company?
So smart, because you are where you are right now because of the decisions that you've made. So
Mhm.
that can't be stated enough. Like, you are where you are right now because of the decisions that you've made. And so if you want to go somewhere else in your journey, you want to go to a higher level, you got to make better decisions.
That's
It
right.
might mean changing your story, might mean, crafting this vision, any number of things that we talked about. We covered a lot today. We talked about identity and fear. We talked about boundaries and burnout. We talked about beliefs and blind spots, and then vision and power. And that's just scratching the surface. If you want to dive deeper into these leadership strategies, if you want to figure out what you need to do to escape from that founder's trap and grow your business more predictably, grow faster, less dependent on you, check us out over at predictableprofits.com. Again, that's predictableprofits.com. This is Charles Gadet with my friend, my co-founder, head of coaching, Stephanie Vaughan, and I will see you in another episode. Thank you, everybody.